Thank you very much, Parminder, and thank you for inviting me here this evening. I spend my day looking after old people, and it's something that I feel passionate about. Many of the issues that we deal with older people are cognitive problems. So I want to just talk about three things this evening. First of all is how we distinguish what normal aging is from abnormal aging, in other words, cognitive impairment. Say a little bit about what we do in geriatric medicine, and then say a word or two about preventing decline of our cognitive functions as we get older. Now, Drs. Sekuler and Pichora-Fuller have talked about some of the changes that occur during normal aging. I'd just like to reflect on those. First, with regard to memory, it's mostly the short-term memory that is affected as we get older. This is known as working memory, and some of the older members of the audience may have noticed that they may dial a telephone number, the number is busy, they turn round and go back to the telephone and they can't remember the number. Has that happened to anyone in the audience? No? Oh, very good. So that's one of the things that happens as we get older. Oh, good. What a relief. Many of the other types of memory, like long-term memory, semantic memory, the memory of words and events, that does not decline with age. Procedural memory, learning to ride a bicycle, you can still do that at any age. So those sorts of memory are very well preserved. There is a change, as Dr. Sekuler said, in perceptual speed. We tend to do things more slowly as we get older, and we may have more difficulty with specific tasks. Mathematical ability does tend to decline with age. Some of the older people in the audience may find out doing their taxes or their shopping list and adding up a list of figures is harder than it used to be. And another thing that is more difficult as we get older is tasks that require divided attention. My daughter, who is in the audience, when she was a teenager, was able to do her homework with the television on, working on the computer and on the telephone to one of her friends. Now, I defy anyone of my age to do even two of those tasks at the same time. So divided attention is something that becomes more difficult as we get older. Now, when these symptoms occur, we don't need to be concerned about them unless they interfere with our ability to get through the day. And it is the difference between normal aging and cognitive impairment is when these things begin to interfere with our ability to do things that we have to do during the daytime, like making a meal, doing the shopping, driving our cars, taking our medications regularly. So that's the fundamental difference between what is normal aging, some of these things that have been described already, and abnormal aging, cognitive impairment, where they begin to impair your ability to get through the day. The Alzheimer's Society, an organization that I have a great respect for, we work very closely with the Alzheimer's Society in our clinics, have a list of 10 things. There are 10 warning signs, and I'm sure Anne Smith will have that list at the table if you want to take a look at that. It includes things like memory problems that begin to interfere with your daily life. Word finding, not just not being able to remember so-and-so's name, but perhaps not being able to remember the names of your grandchildren or your own children, those sorts of things, when it begins to impact seriously on your daily life. So that's some of the differences between normal aging and cognitive impairment. What do we do during the daytime? Well, as clinicians in geriatric medicine, with a particular interest in dementia and other cognitive disorders, what we do when we see individuals that have been sent to us is, first of all, try and find out exactly what is going on. In other words, is this mild cognitive impairment something which is perhaps a little worse than normal but still not really affecting an individual in their daily life, or whether this is a dementia. Dementia means when these abnormalities seriously interfere with our daily life. So it's a matter of sorting out those, what type of dementia it is, and this may involve taking a history, examining the person, doing some laboratory tests, sometimes doing brain scans and so on, and then formulating a plan with the individual and their families and caregivers about how we look to the future. Connecting them perhaps with certain community agencies that help them cope with their daily life. Definitely connecting them with the Alzheimer's Society, preparing them for educational events and so on. Prescribing medications sometimes, but making a commitment to follow them over time so that we can monitor their progress and help them as they go through different stages of their illness. Now just a bit about prevention. We know very well what the risk factors are for developing a dementia, and these should be as no surprise to any of us. They are things like lack of exercise, a sedentary lifestyle, a poor diet, high blood pressure that isn't treated, being mentally inactive, being socially disengaged. These are all risk factors that we know are associated with the development of dementia in later life. Some of the things that protect us are more education. We know that if people have more than 12 years education, then they're less likely to develop a dementia. If they are physically active, they are 30% less likely to develop a dementia. A piece of research which convinced me that it was time to exercise every day was a study that showed individuals who were divided into an exercise group and a non-exercise group. At the beginning of 1 year, they had brain scans, and one of the things they measured in the brain scans was the size of the hippocampus. Hippocampus was mentioned by Dr. Sekuler, and it's an incredibly important part of the brain for memory. So the group that exercised for 1 year were compared with the group that did not, with repeat brain scans, and what they showed was at the end of 1 year, the hippocampus on each side actually enlarged. You can literally grow your brain, that part of the brain that is extremely important in memory, after 1 year of regular exercise 3 times per week. So we know that that's one way we can help reduce the risk of future dementia. Having risk factors treated, so high blood pressure, sometimes high cholesterol, other conditions, and diet. We think the most effective diet for preventing cognitive changes in late life is probably the Mediterranean diet. In other words, not a lot of red meat, lots of fish, lots of poultry, 5 to 10 portions of fruit and vegetables per day, lots of olive oil, and a glass of red wine, at least, per day. It's interesting that there have been numerous studies that show that a small amount of alcohol is also protective for development of future dementia.
And
so some of the
socially too.
And very good socially too, yeah. So some of the things that we can do to protect and reduce our risk of developing cognitive changes with age are those things that we mentioned. Avoiding head injuries. I mean, we know the stories of the hockey players and the football players who have repeated concussions and then develop a dementia. That's a pretty sad state of affairs, and we should be working very hard to prevent that sort of thing. So just to summarize then, we can distinguish what's normal aging from abnormal aging. In geriatric medicine, we try very hard to help people through this course of events, and we are beginning to get a much better idea of what we can do to prevent these illnesses in later life. So I'm going to stop there. Thanks very much.